Rutger McGroarty trade talk is just continuing as Murat Atis, Winnipeg's beat reporter for The Athletic, posts another article that lists the Montreal Canadiens as one of the teams that should be going after him. We have to get into that, plus all the Martin Necas trade drama, including now him being potentially linked to Nashville and some crazy mock trades that we've also discussed in other videos. We have maybe to talk about Laval, have to talk about Montreal's plan this offseason, the upcoming draft, and a final mock draft from Scott Wheeler that has Ivan Demidov going in a very interesting draft position that we haven't really seen, plus a little preview of the Stanley Cup Final Game 7, all coming up on this live episode of Habs Digest. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and I'm already seeing the poll. Everyone's saying they're rooting for Edmonton tonight. We're breaking out the Canadian sweaters to, go for the Canadian team. This is the 1993 Stanley Cup patch, Patrick Roy jersey, the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Feel it's a good omen. Going to be watching tonight. We're going to start the stream though with a super chat because we have to. We had a super chat before the stream. I wanted to thank Real Milton Bradley. Real Milton Bradley, big fan, always been here. $2, beat that Plonko. Can't wait to see when Plonko gets here. I don't know if he's going to see that, but I hope he does. Plonko might have to do €2 to get back at you. But Jesse, this is maybe a crazy thing to start with, but there was a quote today from Dave Pagnotta, and it had to do with Trevor Zegras, not a guy that we talk about a ton, but I'm gonna bring this up here. Let me bring that back up there. Where is it? Here it is. At least 8 teams have expressed serious interest in Zegras, including the Chicago Blackhawks, New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens, Philadelphia Flyers, Ottawa Senators, Nashville Predators, Calgary Flames, and the Buffalo Sabres. And I believe other clubs have also been in the mix. So basically what Dave Pagnotta is saying is that every single team in the league wants Trevor Zegras. But the big thing that he said also in his article, Jesse, is that the asking price is sky high. Every person, every member of organizations that he spoke to said the only thing they could say is, the price is really big. It's interesting that Montreal has continued to be linked to Zegras, and I'm sure, again, we've talked about Kent going after him. But I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on him. I think the fans know our opinion on Trevor Zegras. I don't think he's a fit for Montreal. I don't think Montreal should give up the assets Anaheim's going to ask for. But isn't it at least a bit interesting to hear that Montreal is still, very interested in Zegras, according to some insiders?
We keep circling back. And first things first, happy Saint Jean to all of our fans. It's the Saint Jean edition of the live stream today. That's it. But, I think Habs fans, I think that, we kind of see that Zegras isn't quite that fit. Let the Ottawa Senators have him. Doesn't that feel like so much more of a fit? Josh, couldn't you see that more of a trade kind of happening, right? It's I don't know if it's exactly the player that they need, but it's surprising for me that the asking price has been so high on a lot of these players. And we'll definitely get into some more, right? It seems Trevor Zegras seems like he wants to go. It seems like they want to get rid of him in Anaheim, but they just keep insisting on this big asking price, right? But I'm honestly, I don't know about you, Josh, but I'm actually surprised to see that Kent Hughes is still kind of in this and still this serious about this type of trade.
Yeah, I mean, being serious probably just means that he's still asking. Hey, has the price gone down? Hey, Pat, has the price gone down? Has the price gone down? Has it, and that wouldn't surprise me, and I think that's what he should be doing, right, at the same time, because if you can get him for a reasonable price, whatever, but at this point, I think we just throw that out the window. I think a lot of this is just smoke and mirrors. I'm kind of pushing that to the side. There's other more important things that I think we want to discuss, but I know you guys are going to leave your thoughts there on Zegras down below, and like Joel says, like you said before, you have to give big to receive big. Let's go, Kent. Make those changes to make us become competitive, and we're going to get into a lot of that coming up here, but before we do, I want to just shout out Joel. Joel knows what's going on here, right? He's always asking you guys to hit the like button, and he's doing it in place of us, but we're going to ask as well, because when you hit like, it helps us, it helps other fans. You guys know the deal. You see the number go up. We really appreciate if you could hit like on the videos. It means so much to us. So if we can see that number get up to 50, I'd really be happy. Jesse, I wanted to move on to a bit on to Martin Necas, because he's a guy we talked about a bit yesterday. And if I move on to the other Dave Pagnotta quote, wow, I didn't realize he zooms in on those. Okay. As the Hurricanes carry out trade talks with teams about Martin Necas, this is from yesterday. The word is Carolina is looking to complete a hockey trade, not a deal strictly for future assets, but he says Montreal is still in the mix. He also says Nashville is still in the mix. Now, while Necas was linked to Nashville today a bit more, Jesse, there's still a lot of smoke. There's people talking about Boston. There's still people talking about all kinds of teams all over the place. When we look at Montreal's fit for him, I still think it makes a lot of sense. And of course, there was that big mock trade that was up there from Sportsnet, from Mr. Dixon over at Sportsnet. And he had Josh Anderson going out, Barron going out, Harris going out, Struble going out, Beck, and a first, all to get Martin Necas. And, you guys can go watch the video yesterday if you want a bit of a more detailed breakdown on this trade. But as we know, Jesse, Martin Necas is an unbelievable guy. But the reason we're bringing this back up is because I wanted to talk to you guys, the fans, because this is the stuff we've talked about in videos a lot, but now that the trade chatter's coming up, leave your thoughts. I want to see comments, all kinds of comments about your thoughts on Necas, and even Necas, like, even a guy like Ehlers, Jesse, is a guy that is going to potentially be involved in this mock trade. I don't know if a three-way trade is going to happen, but he's another guy, too, that Carolina could get to replace him. Your thoughts on Necas at this point? How likely do you think it is Montreal pulls the trigger on him? Because it feels like it's more likely every single day, despite the fact Carolina says they don't want future assets.
I think that the Montreal Canadiens, including Kent Hughes, are open to trading for Martin Necas, just as long as it doesn't mean kind of selling the farm, right? But I think, Josh, like if we're talking about the probability, I think with this high asking price, this is forcing Kent Hughes, I think, to be creative, and it just makes it even more unexpected of what's going to happen next, because I know we're hearing talk of whether it's a top 6 forward, or if not that, then maybe pivoting to kind of get a top 10 sort of draft pick, right? Like one way or another. So you have to feel like if the Necas kind of trade isn't happening, what is Kent Hughes going to really do in lieu of that, right? But if we could pull up like his stats again for Martin Necas, like what's interesting about him is that like last year he had, like, according to his development, somewhat of an off year with 18 points less than the previous year before. That's something you don't even hear about all the time with Necas, which is fairly considerable, right? You see, he's on that upward trajectory, of course, right? But if you're looking at a guy that like 24 goals, 18 points less than the previous year, if that's kind of a bad year, I feel like this is a player that where he's going to be next year in an increased role, even more so, he's going to be putting up some numbers. Like I look at his kind of career trajectory and I say next year he's prime for it. We know guys like to give in their best effort in their contract years, but I think with Necas, even though he's going to be getting to that first year of that new contract, I think that he's ready to take off. Definitely worth, a trade from the Montreal Canadiens, just as long as it's not too much.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It all depends on the price, because if you get him for a decent price, fine. Now, I know you have to extend him, and how much you're going to have to pay him, who knows? My guess is between $7 and $8 million. I don't think you'll actually get him at less than Suzuki. I think you probably have to be a bit closer to 8. It is what it is. Again, like he's primed to thrive in an offense that is a bit more free-flowing, one that works off the rush a bit more, one that's a bit more dynamic than Carolina's whole system. I think it can work. I think it can work. Honestly, I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, I saw a comment there and they wake me up when the trade actually happens. Like, come on, Kent, stop teasing us here now. We know the draft is coming in 4 days. There's going to be trades this week. We're hearing all kinds of stuff, but I think he fits. And actually, I see Derek, channel member Derek. By the way, guys, again, as you guys know, we answer chats in order of donations and channel members. So if you're either one of those, you give a donation or you're a channel member, we'll be answering your message in priority. Try to get to everything else. As you guys know, we try to answer everyone. But Derek said that's a PlayStation scenario in that big trade. It really is. It really, really is. But again, three-way trades get very complicated. They're almost impossible to pull off the NHL level, minus like actual three-way trades of like each team getting decent assets is very difficult, right? Like you can see Montreal involved in that Erik Karlsson trade, but it was more like just kind of filling some salary, retaining here and there, right? Like that kind of stuff happens. But when it's like Necas goes to one team, Ehlers goes to another, and you just disperse prospects and Josh Anderson out to other teams, it's like it gets a little more difficult for all of them to come together. And I wanted to read a few here, people talking about, yeah, do you really want Necas to be the fourth $8 million-ish forward on the roster? Shouldn't we hold out for someone better who matches up better with our competitive window? I would challenge that. Necas is 25. I think he matches up perfectly fine with the competitive window. Like he's basically the same age as Nick Suzuki, and I know the other guys are going to be like better. Like, you got guys like Slav, who's younger, whoever they picked this year. You got Reinbach, you got Hudson, who are like in those young, your early 20s, but you still need a balance. Like in 3, 4, 5 years, it's not like Necas going to be falling off a cliff. He's going to be pushing around 30. Like, you sign him to like a 6-7 year deal and he's like 30 and you're competing. Like, it's not that bad, right? And you still need someone to put up points. But also, like, for the price that it would take to acquire a player of his caliber, I think it could be lower than what you'd typically have to pay. And we talked about something like that for Laine, potentially for Zegras, before we heard that the Anaheim Ducks are asking for a king's ransom. Do you think he fits the timeline, Jesse, just purely from like a fit perspective and a scoring perspective and an age perspective? Because I feel like he does. I'm not sure if the narrative there that he doesn't. And again, like a good point from Lucas there, the cap's going up as well. So if you can get him at like $7-8 million, it's like, I don't think it's the end of the world, even if he only puts up 30 goals, 65-point seasons for you. Like it's not ideal, but it's not the worst thing if he's going to end up being a solid goal scorer.
I don't think the question is so much the timeline. Like I think he does fit the timeline, to your point, Josh, like not overly old. If anything, he's going to be getting to his peak. We'll need to kind of pepper in a little bit of more veterans as we look to get competitive, because obviously that's so big. But I think it's a great point, though, that our viewer brings up, is like, is he the player, though? As I mentioned yesterday, kind of having doubts in that, because again, you know, as I've mentioned before, it's like, if we're looking to trade, okay, it's like, would Matheson be going the other way? Like, if it's our guy for the top 6, knowing that this is what this Montreal Canadiens teams, if it's really the right guy, and you'd be like, yeah, no, for sure. Like, love Matheson, but, you know, got to do it. Like, I'm not even a huge Matheson guy, and I'm worried about that trade just a little bit, right? Because we know we can get that offense from Matheson for sure. He gives a little bit too on the offensive end in terms of allowing some goals the other way. But, you know, I think like when it's that guy that the Habs really kind of need, because again, we're looking to complete our top 6, but with Kirby, Dach, like our top 6 is closer than it seems. I know it seems really far and like we need to add so much, but like we do this draft really good. We add another player. I think with what we have, there's not too much more there to our top 6 other than maybe adding like a vet at some point, even like a year from now, to really kind of solidify that as you look to be competitive, right? So it's like, I really think it is important to make it a slam dunk. And, you know, for me, it's just like, what makes this trade kind of debatable is just like, again, like, why is Carolina asking so much when we know that like Necas wants to go? They basically don't look like they have room for him. It just seems funny that there's such a high asking price when, by all right, they should have no leverage in this trade whatsoever.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got teams looking that they could acquire a guy who, by all accounts, is poised for a breakout in a different situation. And so teams are willing to pay maybe a higher price, right? So maybe Carolina's like, I want this, but holy crap, look at what they're offering me. Like, the thing is, we're never really going to know, but you're very right in the sense that, like, I think you're right on this in the sense that Montreal's top 6 is very unpredictable right now. Like, we don't know what this is going to look like in 2 years. We don't know what Dach is going to be. We don't know what Newhook is going to be. We think we do. We can try and project, like Newhook probably projects as like a 40, 45, maybe 50 point guy, speedy winger. Great, can play some center. Dach, we hope he projects to be like a 60, 65 point guy who's a playmaking, like play driving center. Hopefully he gets better on the faceoff dot. Like, we can assume these things, but we don't really know. Like, because realistically, like a feasible second line that we could see this year is Joshua Waugh, Kirby Dach, and Alex Newhook. Like, that might happen at some point. And all 3 of those guys are like, we don't know what they're going to be in 2 to 3 years. So getting a guy that you know is already a good scorer is also very important. But again, at that price, like you said, it's like you want to make sure you're getting the best value, best bang for your buck if you can. So it's going to be a tough thing. Necas is such an interesting topic, and I really hope a trade goes through sooner rather than later, either to Montreal or to another team, so we can stop talking about this and theorizing about what's going to happen. But we're going to read some chats. I see Abraham. Abraham, thank you for coming back. Abraham's always here in these streams. Good to see you, Abraham. Seneca would be a great pick. We'll get into some of that stuff later. Derek says, I would absolutely trade either Mailloux or Reinbacher plus for Rutger McGroarty. That's the guy I'd love to add to our core. Well, Jesse, I don't think there's ever been a better transition, has there? Let's move off from Necas. Let's move on to Mr. Rutger. Now, of course, Murat Ates, the Winnipeg Jets writer for The Athletic, just yesterday, I believe, said, or 2 days ago, I'm starting to lose track of the days. I think it was 2 days ago. He said, it seemed like a perfect storm emerged that the Jets' patient long-term approach to player development combined with McGroarty's NHL ambitions in a way that led to differing opinions that could not be overcome. And now just today, Jesse, I think this is the picture. Hopefully I bring it up right. In his article with a bit of an update on the whole Ehlers and McGroarty situation, he said this. He said, at the moment, Winnipeg doesn't have a first-round pick in 2024. Rutger McGroarty could have appeal to any team that has a first-round pick to spare, including the teams who have multiple first-round picks. He goes on to name San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, Montreal, Ottawa, Calgary, Philadelphia. Now, let's be honest. All of those teams could potentially be fits. Of course, Philadelphia losing Cutter Gauthier, but getting Jamie Drysdale in that interesting trade. So they could maybe use it, but they got Matvei Michkov coming over. Adding a guy like McGroarty for cheap could be amazing for their future. They're also shopping guys like Joel Farabee, potentially Morgan Frost, potentially Travis Konechny. Philadelphia could have a completely different roster over the next 2 years. We don't know. But of course, Montreal is on that list. Now, trading number 5 for Rutger McGroarty, I think would be irresponsible because Rutger McGroarty, I think, was a 14th overall draft pick, but he has been so phenomenal in college. I think it just makes perfect sense. I mean, he's a guy that, like, immediately for us, Jesse, he fits the bill. He's 6'1", he's a big boy. He plays like he's playing against children when he's in the NCAA. Like 50-odd points in 39 games. He was point per game as a freshman. I feel like everything lines up for him. The only question is Winnipeg, even if we give him back their pick, does Montreal have the oomph in that trade offer to really get Winnipeg to go for it when they're a team that's kind of still in their competitive window?
Again, the asking price is going to be very high, but doesn't Rutger McGroarty, at least in theory, feel so much more like a Montreal Canadian of that type of player that we're going for, right? I think that's the type of test that we have to have for these players that Kent Hughes is going to do, not only at the draft, but also for players bringing in as well. And I mean, you look at his game, there's definitely the physical attributes there. But what I like is like equal part playmaker and goal scorer. I like that with him. You never know what to expect. He's keeping goalies on his toes, right? Because he's so great at setting up plays, but of course he can finish as well. So I think like the way that he plays, stylistically, culturally, great fit for the Habs. My question to you, Josh, and for our fans, our viewers is like, is there any red flags with the fact, in your opinion, that he's asking for a trade out of Winnipeg? Is there something about that maybe you don't like?
You know, I mean, sort of, but here's the thing. Like, I saw an interesting tweet. I think it was from Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, and he said something along the lines of, I could be wrong with the person, so don't quote me on that, but it was someone. And they said something along the lines of, over the past few years, we've had a lot of American NCAA players who have decided to just not play for their NHL teams. Have we had a Russian guy do that? At worst, they've just taken a little longer to come over. You look at the Kuznetsovs of the world, the Kaprizovs of the world. It's actually maybe more common to have an NCAA guy not do it. And it's weird because, like, I mean, I get it on the one hand, like, you want to play NHL minutes and pretty much, but it's another thing too when, like, every scout, every writer, everyone who's watching you play, even your college coaches are kind of like, yeah, you're ready to go to the NHL, and you're seeing all your teammates getting chances to go to the NHL, whether it's the World Junior teammates or other college teammates, or your friends in college, they're all at least getting a cup of coffee in the NHL at this, at the end of their season, and he wanted to do that. And Winnipeg was in that playoff push, and I think it's fine that they didn't bring him in for their playoff push. That makes enough sense to me. But to not at least say, hey, I come to training camp, like, we're gonna try and really integrate you into this roster. Look, I'm not in a position to know whether this is a McGroarty issue or whether it's a Winnipeg issue. I'm inclined to believe it's a Winnipeg issue, but you never really know. But to me, it's not really a red flag. Like, to me, if I'm a kid, I'm a highly touted draft pick. I've done everything to prove to everyone that's watching me I deserve a shot in the NHL. And my NHL team is not ready to do that. And I'm well aware that there are other teams that are willing to do that. To me, I don't see it as a red flag, Jesse. I see it as a guy who is just thrilled to get to that next level and prove to everyone that he has what it takes.
And Montreal seems like such a great environment, right? Where we could really give them a great role so early on. I like it when players know that they need to get that time and play with other great players, like as well. For sure, there's stories back in, of history with Eric Lindros going way back and kind of some red flags. But I think at the same time, it's like when you're an athlete, time is of the essence. And you're at a certain point where it's like, okay, I'm finished with this level. For me to actually get better as a player, I need reps at the other level. There's practice and all the things, but there's no substitute for being at that game. When you're training, it's like really time again is of the essence. It's so important, right? So I feel like sometimes I think some teams will learn. I think if the Winnipeg Jets could go back, they would say, maybe we need to make a little bit of room, like for our star guys. When you never want a prospect really dictating the terms to you, right? But it just brings up with the Habs kind of philosophy of late, right? Where they've kind of chosen for a lot for their star guys, not to marinate them too much, in the AHL, really give them that opportunity. And there's always kind of those pros and cons, but we can see the opposite, right? If, you're putting a guy like Slafkovsky and putting him in the AHL and keep him first sign that something goes wrong, right? Like, that's not always the best case. You really need to give these guys the shot at that next level when you do think they are ready. So for me, it's not overly a red flag. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I get him wanting his reps, and Montreal might be the benefactor of that.
Yeah, it could be too. And the thing is, like, Rutger McGroarty, by all accounts, is also an amazing leader. Not only is he a fantastic player, he's a locker room leader and a guy that genuinely wants to get better every day. To me, he has so many green flags. And, like, when I understand the situation in Winnipeg and what even the Winnipeg writers are saying about the situation, it's like, yeah, no, it's not ideal, but I get it. And to me, it's not a big problem. But we'll have to wait and see. I want to get to some chats here. Derek saying, let's not put too much into the price is high. Of course it's high, but Mayu in their first round pick back doesn't hurt in any way. No, I agree. Like, something like that would be, I mean, I'd be down for that, right? Like, that's the thing. You're trading a high offensive prospect defenseman and at the 26th pick in the draft, which statistically is not going to turn into a Rutger McGroarty type player, at least not very likely to. And then you get a guy who's coming off an amazing NCAA season who could be good in the NHL. Again, like these trades, I think Kent Hughes is in the position to overpay. Whether it's the 26th pick, Mayu, or whoever else, whatever else, like, I'm not saying he is going to go give Reinbacher or Guhle in this type of thing. Like, not to say they're completely off the table, but I think they mostly are. That's just me saying that. There's no source on that. It's just kind of my feeling. But like, they have just this stockpile, this treasure chest of assets that they can use. And that includes some NHL guys like Matheson or Savard. If the right trade came, I don't think they would hesitate to move these guys. Dvorak, I don't know if he holds much value, but to some teams, maybe he would, right? It is what it is. Derek responding to a chat asking who's better, Yzerman or Rutger. I'd take Rutger McGroarty, Jesse. I know you like Cole Yzerman, but I think that like we've seen this guy just be kind of an all-around player, a solid defensive game, very solid playmaker, very solid goal scorer. He's a locker room leader. He does everything. I guess he's not really a center, so he doesn't really win draws, but neither really is Yzerman. So it's like, I don't know, like that's almost impossible to say, but I think Yzerman's going to go at about the same place in the draft Rutger went. I mean, do you have an opinion one way or the other? I feel like I haven't seen enough of McGroarty to really make a judgment, but my gut says him, but I guess who knows?
McGroarty, just for the combination of skill, size, but also character. I think that's what I'd give him the edge over Yzerman. I still think Yzerman's definitely capable and will score more goals in the NHL than McGroarty. But again, just overall effect, fit on the team, I'd have to go with McGroarty.
You forgot a key point, though, his name. I mean, it's just so cool. Like, it's so cool. Rutger McGroarty. Like, oh my gosh. It's kind of gross, but cool. It's amazing stuff. Glenn says, you two guys are like Hall and Oates. Oh, well, thank you. It's very, very nice. Feeding off each other well with engaging dialogue, opinions, insight, and abundance of energy. Well done, boys. Sorry, Jesse, can't agree on the Habs jersey, though. He doesn't like the baby blue. I actually debated wearing that. It's okay.
Who says that?
What? Yeah, Saint Jean. Get the blue jersey. I'll get the blue and white. Come on, it's Saint Jean. You got to do something like that. I mean, I'm wearing the old red and white, but there's this thematic, right? This is this. If I didn't have this, I'd probably be wearing the powder blue one as well. But it is what it is. I think we're going to move on to the next topic, Jesse, and I think it's no better time than now to talk about the draft. This is the last live stream before the draft, but guys, everyone here, all 325 of you, first of all, hit the like button. Just asking you right now, go down, hit it if you're enjoying the stream. Thank you. Also, we're going to be live for the draft on June 28th. We're going to be going live I forget exactly the time. We'll make community posts on the channel warning you probably every single day leading up to the draft, but we will be live on Friday during the draft. Please come in, tune in. We can't broadcast it live, obviously. We're not partnered with Sportsnet, but we will be reacting right along with you. If you want to share your experience or excitement with the draft for someone, this is the spot to be. And I think we got to start next, Jesse, with something Scott Wheeler said recently. Now, Scott Wheeler, Corey Prom, and all the guys at The Athletic have been doing their mock drafts constantly over the past month or two. But Scott Wheeler recently did his final one before the draft, and he had a very interesting thing. He had Ivan Demidov going at number 4 to Columbus, and Montreal taking Cayden Lindstrom at 5, which is not the most insane thing. We haven't really seen that a lot, but it's one of the quotes he had there that I wanted to bring up. He said, in the unlikely event that both Lindstrom and Demidov are available, I do wonder if the winds are blowing in Demidov's direction. Now, of course, again, he has Demidov going at 4, but he says if Demidov's there from Montreal, he actually thinks they might be leading him over Lindstrom. And if they do surprise and go with a D, I'd guess that Boyum makes the most sense logically. So this is interesting. Now, I know the draft there's so much stuff. I see some people talking about Beckett Seneca, some people sold on C. Boyum, some people saying Cayden Lindstrom's back is too much of a red flag. Demidov, he didn't play against great players. There's always negatives for every player, Jesse, but basically what we're gathering is that right now for Montreal, it's Demidov, it's Lindstrom, and then it's like Z Boyum / Beckett Seneca. That's what Marc-Olivier Baudouin said. And then that's kind of what's being reflected here by Scott Wheeler, kind of him now starting to get the vibe that Demidov is the Habs' favorite. So, if they're both available, who would you take? But at this point now, if it seems like this is just something that popped in my head when I saw this. If it seems like Columbus is leaning towards Demidov, if that's kind of where they're going, is there ever a world where Montreal trades up to number 4 to get him? I don't think they would. I think they'd just sit tight at 5 because they have lots of guys that they'd be very happy to get. But I don't know. I think Kent is he might be primed to say, expect the unexpected and do something absolutely bonkers.
I'm getting excited. It's just a couple more sleeps away, and honestly, I can't wait. Right? Man, the hype is getting real. Honestly, if we're able to get Demidov or Lindstrom, I'm happy. To answer your question, I'm taking Demidov because it's something that this Habs team has needed. Think Kovalev, but way better. But that back checks and everything else like that, it's what this team really, really deserves, right? Again, though, I would be unreal happy if we're able to get Lindstrom as well. I think both of them offer, I think there's so much pros that you could list for either, right? I think that, still Demidov, the one knock is you could say against him to maybe argue for Lindstrom, maybe he won't be good in playoffs. Maybe, he's a, Panarin type. And I feel like the Russian comparisons of just saying that somebody's not good in the playoffs just because they're Russian. Like for me, he's giving somebody a back checks, plays a solid, 200-foot game. He's giving us every reason to believe that he's going to compete when it really matters the most. You take all that skill. I'm saying Demidov all day. Josh, if in the situation though, right, which can happen, which we need to be ready for, we need to brace ourselves as Habs fans. We're there at the live draft, right? And both Lindstrom and Demidov are gone. One name that wasn't mentioned here, I'm seeing in tons of drafts, and rightfully so, Guhle.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's okay. I still want Demidov. I still want Lindstrom, but I'd be okay. I like the way that he competes. I think that he's a grinder with just like tons of skill, which I think is an amazing combination. Fits a lot of the game that we're trying to play. Again, can just put the puck at the back of the net, and amazing shot. So I would be happy. I would definitely be happy, but I think we all know who the Montreal Canadiens really want.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it definitely feels to me based on, like, we're so tuned in. We're looking at everything that comes out about the Montreal Canadiens, and all the signs are pointing to Demidov being the pick if he's available. Whether Montreal would trade up to get him, that seems less likely just because of how much uncertainty there is, because Chicago could also take him at number 2, right? Like, you got Artyom Shudov there as well, who's kind of going to them in most mock drafts, but you never really know. You know what? I'm going to get people in the chat. I'm not going to put a poll. I want you to type D for Ivan Demidov and just send D, and I want you to type L for Cayden Lindstrom, whichever one you would pick if they're both available. And I'm actually curious to see. Just type in the chat D or L. D for Demidov, L for Lindstrom. I want to see what the answers are, because I agree with you too, Jesse, that like those are kind of the guys. They could both be gone. We don't know. We're not going to know until draft night what Cayden Lindstrom's back is how that's going to affect a bunch of other teams, right? Because it could be one of those cases where like he's kind of, I don't know if you guys follow basketball at all, but if you know Bol, he was kind of the Wemby before Wembanyama, right? So many years ago, not that long ago, he's still in the league now, but like 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever that was, he was getting drafted. Getting into the year, he was like kind of projected maybe top 5, maybe top 10, and then lottery, and then there was word that he was sliding down, and he got picked 44th overall. He had all the tools, but there was a bit of injury concern, and his progression wasn't as good as people thought it would be. So it's like, could we get surprised on draft night and see Lindstrom slip into like maybe the late top 10? I don't know, right? Probably not, just because of his sheer talent. But Iginla's a fantastic option as well, Jesse, when you look at, like, we heard what Craig Button had to say, a guy that was part of the team that drafted Jarome Iginla, and he's saying, I'm worried that I'm almost underrating Tej because we saw he was a good player, but his ability to get better was just unbelievable. So I think Tej is amazing, but apparently he's not really on the Habs list. He's not appearing on the FanDuel betting odds, which is not something, we don't gamble on sports, but again, when you're looking at, what the general feel is around the hockey world, that kind of tells you a lot. Beckett Seneca is a name that I see well above Iginla, Jesse, and I'm going to go back to you to maybe get some thoughts on Seneca as potentially that guy above Iginla. As I look in the chat, I'm going to be careful with my phrasing here. A lot of you have typed the letter D in the chat instead of the letter L. I was about to say the chat's filled with, not going to say that. But so anyway, there's a lot of people that really like Demidov in chat, Jesse. And Mason says Habs fans are delusional. Thank you, Mason. I love being delusional. It's part of the job. No, but Beckett Seneca versus Tej Iginla. I would go Tej, but I see the appeal for Seneca. I want to hear some of your guys' thoughts on Seneca versus Iginla too. You don't need to type a letter. You can just give your thoughts, whatever it is. But I think Seneca, I just think Tej, like, I know people talk about Seneca's ceiling, but I think Tej just feels like he's more of a can't-miss guy. So Seneca comes with a risk, but he's the guy that we actually see as like the third forward on Habs draft boards, kind of all over the place. So it's like, that wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah, I would make a move if possible, to get in that top 4 to secure a Lindstrom or Demidov. I actually think it's really important, just if you have any inclination that might happen. But again, like the Habs have picked like Juraj Slafkovsky in the past, where he didn't have like a huge track record. Like for sure he did good at the Olympics, some pretty good play, playing against grown men. But similar to Seneca, where he didn't have like this huge track record where, they took a flyer on him and obviously it's paid off really well. I think that works well under certain circumstances. I like his style of game. I think it fits the Habs really well, but I am always worried, right, with like players where I haven't seen like a ton. You know, for sure we saw that second part of the season was really good, but unless I have some other information, I want to see more with that fifth overall. I think you're right on the money. Like with Tej, like much more of a safer bet. Still plays like those similar type of games, right? But I don't think that you're losing out on any skill from Tej again to Seneca. You know, obviously, maybe just the mobility is what I like, you know, with Seneca a little bit more, just being able to really carry that puck almost like
taller,
Bobby Orr kind
like,
of. Right? You know what I mean? But, you know, again, like he mixes it up, you know? And, you know, obviously, I think that skill is just a little bit more trackable at that next level. Like, I feel like Bennett Seneca is like definitely for me, like a player that has a really high upside or could maybe not go so well, right? But if he does make it, you know, to the NHL, I think he's going to be really good, Josh. Like, that being said, I got a little bit of a curveball for you here, but it's like, is there any names like out of the, let's say the top 10 of draft picks this year? Because we know not all these guys pan out. Sometimes it takes a while for that to really be the case. But is there one guy that stands out like maybe you see as a player that maybe wouldn't pan out in the NHL?
Oh man, like it's tough to say like wouldn't pan out. Like it's hard for me to project any of these guys to not make the NHL. I do think Seneca has a decent bit of bust potential, but I don't think it's high enough for me to say. A guy that keeps coming to my mind is like Yzerman is a guy who could potentially be lower impact than a lot of the guys drafted around him. But I don't necessarily think he's going in the top 10. I'm going to be honest. I look in the top 10, maybe the biggest guy I was going to say Salaya, but I don't think he actually has bust potential. I just think it's going to take him longer than the others to get to that NHL level. It's actually really hard for me to say. Like, as I look through these players, like, they all seem so solid. Even these defensemen like Xhekaj. Some people have him as, like, the best defenseman in the draft. Some people have him as, like, the sixth best defenseman. Sam Dickinson. My guess, is probably just Yzerman. I don't think he's going to be bad at the NHL level, but I feel like he's the guy that I could definitely see, like, never really topping much more than, like, a second-line wing scorer who scores a lot on the power play. Versus, like, the upside of some other guys is maybe higher, but I don't know. Maybe the fans here can give us a bit more thoughts on that. But just, I got to get to the chat, because we got some super chats. We got some chats from members. Derek saying, Lindstrom, he's too young, and athletic therapists have all the resources to get him on the ice. That's a very good point. Like, medicine has come so far, especially for injuries like that. Can't wait to see it. And Planko, I'm glad to see you here. Sorry a bit late today. Well, you got beat by Milton Bradley early in the stream. He donated $2 before the stream started, and he said, beat that, Planko. And Milton Bradley, again, with the second super chat of the stream, for another $2 saying, I see you, Planko. That's his 5th super chat ever. Leave a like on Real Milton Bradley's super chat, guys. Leave him some love there. So, Planko, you got some competition. I mean, no pressure, just saying. And Mason coming in, leaving some negative comments about the Habs. They're saying we're not going to be in the... I don't know if that's a negative or positive one. He said we're delusional, but then said in 5 years we'll be in the playoffs. Whatever. But he's an Edmonton fan. So I wanted to shout out Edmonton. Because in that poll, Jesse, 85% of our fans in here are cheering for Edmonton. We're cheering for your team, Mason. I don't know if you left or you're still watching or what, but we're all cheering for Edmonton. We want the Stanley Cup to come back to Canada. I would like, you know, if Edmonton wins the Cup, McDavid goes, like, this is one of the most historic times in history, like, ever, right? It's unbelievable. I guess I kind of transitioned from the draft, Jesse, into that. Do you want to just talk about the Stanley Cup Finals for a few minutes? Because we got some other stuff I did want to get into in the next 10 minutes before we call the stream, but let's just do a little bit of Stanley Cup Final talk. I mean, like, we don't talk about other teams too much here on the channel. I mean, other than, like, when they're rumored with the Habs, but this is Canada we're talking about. This is Canada rallying around the Oilers. Would this have happened if it was Toronto Maple Leafs? Probably not. We probably wouldn't be, celebrating them, but Edmonton is about to do the impossible. If they win this game, McDavid's going down as this might literally be the single best postseason in history for any player. That's a high bar, but I think you can make that argument with this guy who set the assist record and is about to lead his team from down 3-0. Any thoughts on this game, Jesse? There's absolutely, like, this is we're witnessing history right now. This might not be repeated in our lifetimes.
Connor McDavid is a man on a mission right now, and that's going to be hard to bet. He's one of those players that just has that laser focus, right? And I loved his quote, kind of when they first won that game, we need to drag him back, to Edmonton with it. That's kind of been the mentality all the way through. So obviously, we're the Montreal Canadiens podcast here. We got to support our fellow Montreal, Canadian teams. Like we were asked actually on our last live stream last Monday, when it wasn't looking so good for Edmonton at all, they were down 3-0. Like, do they have a chance? Or rather, it was 3-1 at that point. They had won one game to get back into it, right? We're asked, like, do you think that they can come back, right? My answer was, obviously, the odds are against them, but it's not over until the fat lady sings. You know, because they showed a lot of fight in that one game, right? And they switched things around in terms of just their overall game. But for me, like Stuart Skinner, some of those saves that he made, right, to really get Edmonton back, like, you know, a lot of people are getting down on him, but the amount of just sheer will that he's shown in some of these games has really impressed me. He's quite a character, right? Like his personality, but those couple of those saves, right, where he's just going post to post, glove just outstretched, right? Like, I think that like, for me, he's such an unsung hero, like in all this. He turned around his game, and that's basically all the Edmonton Oilers need. He really took that momentum, that spotlight from Bobrovsky, right, as the best goalie in this series. You know, as of late, he's now taken that title, but now it's tonight, right? So for me, it's like this game is going to come down to Skinner and Bobrovsky. That's going to be the big thing, you know, for sure. Like, Bobrovsky was winning so like early on, right? But Edmund kind of struck back. So again, this game tonight is going to be huge. And I know so many of you, we just can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, and you know who else can't wait to watch it, Jesse? That's Plonko. Is he doing these €5 to beat out the real Milton Bradley? The €5. Oh my gosh, the purchasing power. He said, you cannot beat the power of the euro. I had to catch some sleep before the game. It starts at 2 a.m. here. Well, Plonko, I hope you really enjoy the game. We're all thrilled for this. As XL Sparta says, Skinner is and has always been an AHL goalie, but that AHL goalie might just win the Stanley Cup. So, hey, you know what? If I'm an AHL goalie and I can win the cup, I'd be happy with that. And who thought that this would happen with Bobrovsky, Jesse, after having, what, a .984 save percentage through, I think, the first 2 or 3 games to turn around? And while he hasn't been that bad, it's just he hasn't been as good. And it's an unbelievable turnaround as we get another super chat. The first one on the channel from Sheldon Plowman. I hope that I am pronouncing that right. I hope it's Plowman. If it's Ploffman, let me know, but I think it's Plowman. Thank you so much for the $10. He said, I'm all in, Plonko. Your move. Well, look, I'm not gonna stop a bidding war from you guys here to win our hearts. Our hearts, hopefully we have enough to go around to all of you, because that's why we do what we do. But no, this is unbelievable. And yeah, good point, Jesse, too. Corey Perry. The Saint Corey Perry, the guy that's never done anything wrong. Of course, he's the guy who's helped Montreal. He's helped Dallas. He's helped Anaheim. He's helped so many teams, and now he's helping Edmonton. Is that Corey Perry effect real? I mean, I think we kind of knew that answer even back when he was playing for Montreal or for Dallas or whenever it was. But feels like every team he's tied to has some success.
Right, but he had that elusive curse of getting to the finals but not quite winning it. But was he ever dang good in our run, right? Like in front of the net, we remind him just creating havoc and everything else. A little bit of an edge to his game. You can see how that fits so well. Like, for sure, it is helping a lot of playoff teams that do have him, right? So honestly, it's like we wish the best. A little bit of a redemption story there, but like in terms of hockey player and everything and just savviness and everything else, he brings a lot to that Edmonton Oilers team.
Yeah, he sure does. And I see a comment there from Don Lefebvre. He said, I'm not from Canada, so my perspective is a bit skewed, but I keep finding myself rooting against Edmonton because I want the Habs to be the last Canadian team to win the cup. Well, here's the thing. I get that. 1993, baby. This is when it happened. I get that, but like, I don't know. Something about this Edmonton team, I just love this story. And all in all, I'm a hockey fan. Like, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, but when it comes to something like this, it's hard to ignore the story. And honestly, like, at this point, it's like 31 years, and the Habs haven't won in 31 years. That, in and of itself, is enough for me to say, like, it's sad enough. So it's like, you know, sort of a reminder in some ways that, oh yeah, Habs haven't been on top for that long, but it is what it is. It's Jesse. Sheldon is going absolutely all in here with another $10 once. And how about that? Sheldon, we cannot thank you enough. This is unbelievable. Thank you so much. He said, you got it. Like, unbelievable. Like, you guys supporting us like this, just, you guys don't understand how much this means to us to be able to just, like, Monday night, Saint-Jean-Baptiste, we're here, 6:15 p.m. Eastern, just chatting with the fans, and we got people just coming and sending this kind of stuff. It's actually such an unreal feeling, and it's hard to describe. So it just, so many thanks to all of you, not just the people donating, but for everyone that's taking time out of your day to come in here and chat with us, even just to watch the stream, even if you're not chatting. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. I see it coming from Derek saying a former Hab will win the cup tonight. Nick Cousins or Brett Kulak. I hope Nick Cousins doesn't win the cup. There's a lot of negative stuff out there about Nick Cousins. You guys can go search that up yourself. He's not a good person from a lot of accounts. So anyway, whatever it is, what it is. Brett Kulak, he's the guy that got us Lane Hudson. I got nothing but love for Brett Kulak. He's great. Jesse, what do you think about Brett Kulak? You like him? I think we're on a pretty positive page with him at this point.
Oh, for sure. The amount of articles I've read about Brett Kulak and trade rumors, everything, or just with his time with the Montreal Canadiens, right? This is a player we've spent a lot of time with. Like, he was really good. Like, he was kind of part of that, on the fringe of that triumvirate, right? That we had on defense on our run to the Stanley Cup Final not so long ago, right? I'm hoping that he can win it at the Edmonton Oilers, because I don't know, maybe I'm just superstitious. It's the sports guy in me, but it's like, I feel like if the Edmonton Oilers win this cup, it's not going to be long again before we see another Canadian team. You know, the drought will be over, the curse will be over, maybe for the Habs as well, right? Maybe that might lift it. I don't know. I just think we just need to kind of break the ice on that and look forward to bringing the cup back to Canada sooner rather than later again.
Breaking the seals, like making that mistake of going to the bathroom after the third beer, Jesse. It's just going to be opening the floodgates after that. It's going to be unbelievable in the future. It's going to be so cool to see the competition, because a lot of Canadian teams are in a great position to succeed in the coming years. Like Ottawa, like, look, I hope that some teams, no one does as good as Montreal, but like Vancouver's in a good spot right now. Calgary, Ottawa, we'll see. They're young. But Montreal's in a good spot. Winnipeg is trying to compete now. They were like number one seed for a good chunk of the season. Vancouver finishes the number one seed. Toronto's always good, which kind of hurts, but it just is what it is. But yeah, anyway, that is what it is. Blanco saying, Sheldon, let's slow it down. I'm not from the rich part of Europe. It's like, again, no need to donate anymore, but thank you so much for even just being here, Blanco. It is what it is. It was 1942 Toronto, the last 3-0 comeback. Yeah, I believe it was. There was players who spent time in World War II. Just there's a couple things I wanted to cover, because we said it in the intro that I just wanted to talk about before we head out. Arber Basu a few days ago in an article for The Athletic listed, well, there was a thing, like every team's beat writer listed the biggest, I guess it was kind of hurdle or biggest challenge, was something like that. Let me see. I got the wording right here. It was, let me just scroll to the top of the article. It was everyone's team's toughest decision. And apologies, I'm just looking over here at the article. But Arber Basu said for Montreal, he said, can they find a top 6 forward to sign short term? They don't want to commit to a long-term contract to help round out the top 6, but if they could find short-term help on the free agent market, I think they would be interested. We talked a bit about this, Jesse. I know you mentioned Jake Gensel, though I feel like he'd only want a long-term deal. We talked about someone like a Jonathan Marsh or so, even though he's 33, he's coming off like 30, 40 goal seasons. You get him for 2-3 years, that can really just help keep you at a high level as he moves on, and you got some younger guys coming in. I didn't think that'd be a tough decision necessarily. I think it's more so tough to find a free agent who's willing to do that, you know?
That's the thing, right? But it would be the ideal situation, because Jonathan Marchessault is a better goal scorer, right, than Martin Necas, right? Like, for me, I see a trade like this as being more probable than a Necas, than a Zegras, or even a McGroarty trade, even though that'd be awesome. I feel like Winnipeg would want so much for that. We got to explore that last one for sure. But I feel like something unexpected, because of just the high ask it seems in the trade market right now. It's for forwards, at least, that it's going to be probably a more unexpected trade that we'll see, of maybe a scoring guy, somebody who can really put the puck at the back of the net, but on a shorter term deal. Like, obviously, I think Jonathan Marchessault on a 2 to 3 year deal, the type of, because this is such a young team, adding like not only such a skill guy, but again, adding like with talent, but also being a vet. And again, that winning sort of culture, I think is so important, not to just bring somebody over with experience, but also somebody skilled for the young guys to really rally behind and really respect. I think is so important, and probably is one of the things that's needed in that Montreal Canadiens locker room still, is on the offensive side of things, of maybe having a little bit more of a respected vet in that top 6. I know we're getting a little bit more into our competitive window when we're talking about that, but the future is now with the Montreal Canadiens, whether we believe so or not. Like, Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon are giving us every reason to believe that they're going to do something big this summer. So these type of unexpected type of move of getting somebody who could really score in a shorter term deal, I think for me is very likely.
Yeah, I think they'd love to go after it, but yeah, again, it's just like, you know, you got a player in the 30s. They want to lock up a contract into their late 30s, if not early 40s, if a team's willing to offer it. And so, you know, some people would love to play for Montreal, maybe a Quebecois native like Jonathan Marchessault, maybe, but you know, it's going to be tough, but I think you're right. I think it could be something very much that they go for. I saw someone at us, Absolute1, said, fix the ticker at the bottom. It shows Hoffman team is Montreal, should be San Jose. I'm going to be honest, that pulls directly from ESPN. That we're not doing that manually. That's automatically generated. So if there's an error in that, pick it up with either ESPN or NHL.com. I think it's ESPN. Go fight with them. They don't know what they're talking about when it comes to hockey anyway. Their broadcasts aren't the best. Sorry, ESPN. We like the Canadian broadcast better.
Not.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. Like, look, it just so happens that you know, the information's easier to pull. pull there. Derek with a $2 super chat. Jesse, Derek's been here all stream. Really hope to see Cedric hire Pascal Vincent for Laval. And what a great transition, because that was the final thing I wanted to talk about in today's video. The Laval Rocket coaching situation. There have been a lot of names listed. I forget who it was that I saw a tweet. Someone say, hey, don't be surprised. What Joshua was, former coach in Sherbrooke in the QMJHL, just kind of finished his season. He's had some really good pedigree, won a QMJHL championship, I believe. There's some links of him to Laval, but also Pascal Vincent, Jesse, of course, was let go from Columbus. I think he could be a good fit as well, though maybe that pay cut is not too enticing for him. I think that job can be pretty enticing, though, because you're looking at a lot of nice young players that could very well transition to the next level. And, you know, Montreal's coaching staff, while it is pretty certain right now, if you can get in on the ground floor with this team, if all goes well and you can be a serious part of developing those prospects, you can have yourself a nice, almost lifelong position with the Habs if things work out super well. Now, obviously, that's not usually what happens with coaches, but I think there's a lot of interesting options out there. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a ton about the open coaching market, especially ones like when it comes to junior coaches trying to make that jump to Laval, but I think it's a very interesting job, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who would love to step in and take JF Houle's now vacant position.
And this is going to be an interesting decision for Kent Hughes of getting him now to choose who he wants to coach, you know, some of our young players, which is such an important part of this organization, right? I do feel who Jeff Gordon, Kent Hughes does select will be probably somebody that they feel comfortable in regards to Martin St. Louis of hiring. I feel like adding like a Pascal Vincent, it might put a, you know, in Montreal, we know with the market, the media so well, right? Like right away, you start putting him in a situation where there's another NHL coach, former NHL coach in Laval, Martin St. Louis, maybe there's a little bit of a cold streak, right? And you start hearing those rumors. Should we kind of promote somebody, you know, our AHL coach and put him in the NHL? I just feel like they want to do anything, even though we all know how much this organization's brass loves, you know, Martin St. Louis. I just feel like for optics purposes, they don't want to do anything where they feel like they're putting them in any sort of pressured sort of situation. Because that's the one knock on Martin St. Louis, right? Oh, he doesn't have the experience of coaching in the NHL. Maybe I'm just reading a bit too much into it, but I feel like making Marty kind of feel good and part of this and not too pressured, like there's somebody coming to steal a spot, which I don't think is the case, but just for appearances purposes, I think is something probably they don't want to do, but it's going to be interesting to see who they select here.
That's actually something that popped into my mind just then when I was kind of describing the situation. I was like, you know, the coaching situation is uncertain. There's all these people who really think that, you know, Marty St. Louis is not the coach to bring the Habs to the next level. And I think that those people who say that with some crazy level of certainty, I think that's just ridiculous. I'm not going to lie to you because there's no way that we can know. We're going to see in the future, though. There's a lot of crazy stuff to come. But Jesse, I think we covered everything we wanted to cover today, guys. I'll give you guys, we got almost 400 people in here. I think this is the most number of people we've had. And Don LaFever with a $10 super chat saying, keep up the great work, guys. Looking forward to the draft. Go Habs. And guys, as was pointed out earlier, I think Derek said it was 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. The draft will be live. What do you think, Jesse? 6:30, 6:45? Maybe we go live to prep? What do you think? Maybe 15 minutes before we get people in here and we get ready to go?
Oh, we're going. We got to get hyped up before.
Oh, yeah.
We need to get the chat going. Oh, we're going to be there.
All right, we'll be going. I'm not sure if it'll be 6:30, 6:45, but we'll be making community posts. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel now to see all that stuff. You can also chat in these. By the way, leave a like on the stream, guys. We got 360 people. I want to see that like number get up to 200 if possible. Like, thank you so much for all tuning in. Thank you so much again, Don, for the $10 super chat. We will be live on Friday, either 6:30 or 6:45 p.m. Share the excitement in the draft with us. We'll be wearing our jerseys. I'll break out my Australian kangaroo leather cowboy hat. I saw someone here from Melbourne earlier in the stream. I bought that in Melbourne. That was the good luck. Well, I wore it last year and we picked the guy I didn't want him to pick, but now I kind of love Reinbacher. So it is what it is. Blanco saying MSL is the new era coach in the NHL. I believe it. Thank you all for tuning into this stream. I'll let that go for another second. But Jesse, I think it's about time to start the outro. That'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for tuning in every single week to watch us live. Thank you for tuning into every single video. And I cannot wait to see you all on Friday. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.